Hello, I've been asked to demonstrate weathering a RailBox boxcar, and I'm using PanPastels in a variety of colours, predominantly a dark grey, a white, a rust colour, as these will form the basis of the weathering. I'm going to be using a brush and a small piece of sponge to dip into the colours. So I'm going to start here with a dark grey. I'm just going to pick up some of the pastel chalk and just sort of wipe it onto the surface in a sort of random pattern. The important thing to remember about weathering is it is random and doesn't follow any set pattern. But essentially that's the process. It's just to pick up some powder and wipe it onto the surface. I then use a large brush just to wipe over the surface, just dragging downwards and across, and you start to see the effect is very subtle, and that's what we're looking for, is a very subtle discoloration of the paint. To get a more definite discoloration, use a small piece of sponge and smear it down, and this will tend to smudge the pastel more than just the brushing on. It smudges and then brushing, and you see that it's starting to build up different shades of a weathered grey pattern. To get a more definite discoloration, use a small piece of sponge and smear it down, and this will tend to smudge the pastel more than just the brushing on. It smudges and then brushing, and you see that it's starting to build up different shades of a weathered grey pattern. Now, as I mentioned before, the colour that you're applying has to be darker than the background colour. So what do we do in a case of something which is black? If we brush on dark grey onto this, it's not going to show. So if I use white and just put some of that white on the dark surface, which is the black, it will start to show more of a contrast. So what we're doing actually is we're actually trying to simulate the effect of oxidization of the paint. So the paint will start to go dull and it will start to pick up dust and dirt. Now I can take that a step further and start to apply some of the sort of rusty red colour here and there, just dabbing it on and not being too particular about how it falls onto the surface, because I'm looking for something which is very, very subtle just a hint of rust. So now if I apply a white on top of that yellow, it's actually going to start to pick out some of the highlights. And again, it's just a random here and there. And what we're looking for is a very subtle, soft interpretation of the weathering process. And don't forget the top. The top of the boxcar also needs to be weathered down. And again, it's a random pattern of it's just applying some colour and suggesting a weathered appearance. So if we try to compare the before, this is before we start doing any weathering, and this is the after. This is what happens when we start to apply a little bit of PanPastel in a very subtle way to try to suggest the oxidization of paint, grime, wear, dirt. It's a very subtle, very believable application